Welcome to the Sunday Superversive Livestream. I am your host, Ben Wheeler, and I'm here today with my co host, Anthony Marquetta. Anthony, how are you doing today?
Lovely.
I'm glad to hear it. Uh, Today we're discussing Idylls of the King by Alfred Tennyson, as well as, let me see here, as well as the Daily Wire Pendragon cycle, probably in the second half.
And some
Not that,
poetry discussion, I think,
and some
generally, right? Because
poetry, yeah,
both of us are trying to learn to both appreciate and write poetry.
yeah. I like riddles. I like riddles a lot, but I don't like solving riddles. I like writing them. That's my whole thing. That's all I do now. Is do that. And people are asking me, "Oh, where's the next episode of Penguins Ghosts?" Like, have this riddle. What do you think? It's not Penguins Ghosts.
Incredible.
They don't get my art. No, we did it. We have been working on that stuff. Uh, Actually, we're just kind of working on things outside of um, the show and our writing in general. It's a time for change, and I'd rather get the change now while the changing is good. Uh,
To
didn't
be
have
clear,
to.
Pinkerton's Ghost is going to run until season 5, or we all die in a fiery explosion. There is no in between. We're not canceling this shit.
Anthony, there's no one else I'd rather have in the concentration gas chambers next to me than you, brother.
Scribbling the last episode of the season 5 on the walls.
That's right. That's right. It's brotherhood, is what it is. Um,
Incredible.
so, uh, the first part of the Idols of the King is a dedication to Prince Albert, I believe, as he died and left a hole in the heart of Queen Victoria and England in general. Um, it starts out dedication these to his memory since he held them dear. Perchance is finding there unconsciously some image of himself. I consecrate with tears these idols. Um, it's touching, but the meat of it is after. As much as it is appropriate to mention, who and what for writing, I don't really. At this point, everyone involved is very dead. Uh, and their memory is best kept in the history books since they were not people of that real mythic time before that broadens and invigorates the hearts of those who study them. Um, so, the first chapter, which we both read, is The Coming of Arthur. Um, it begins with these lines. Leodegrand, the king of Camelard, had one fair daughter and none other child, and she was the fairest of all flesh on the earth, Guinevere, and in her his one delight. For many a petty king ere Arthur came, ruled in this isle, and ever waging war each upon other, wasted all the land, and still from time to time the heathen host swarmed over seas and harried what was left. And so there grew great tracts of wilderness, wherein the beast was ever more and more, but man was less and less, till Arthur came. For first Aurelius lived and fought and died, and after him King Uther fought and died, but either failed to make the kingdom one, and after these King Arthur for a space, and through the puissance of his table round, drew all their petty princedoms under him, their king and head, and made a realm and reigned. Hmm. It's a great start,
It
and
is.
it sums up everything in the King Arthur story that's important to understand what's going on. Um, King Arthur inherited a broken land, a wasteland, And it's obvious in all the adventures that the knights go on. So many times, King Arthur or Gawain or whoever or Lancelot, go off, and it seems like the lands are empty except for a few ruined churches, hermits, some farms here and there, some barely holding on towns. It's one of those things where the land abandoned, sort of, by Rome, um, is just unable to sustain itself against the evil that's being done from the lack of a king, from the lack of good men willing to defend the land. It doesn't take much to see that there's a direct connection, the what I call Fisher King rules, a direct connection between the ruler and the land that he rules. If it's a good ruler, the land will be brought forth into wealth and comfort and fertility and all this other stuff. But if it is an evil king or no king at all, who knows which one is worse? The land will become wilderness, will become abandoned. You also see these things in real life. If you read the Bible and compare the land in places like, the beginning of the Kings, books of Kings, King David, King Solomon, um, and even, for Rehoboam and other things like that, the land seems full. There's many different towns and many peoples, and there's, it seems like the land of Israel is full of all kinds of good things. The blessings of God that He had promised them are very strong. But then, of course, as time goes on and the Israelites abandon God, it gets worse and worse and worse. And the land, as it's being described in these histories, seems emptier and emptier. um, that the Babylonians and Assyrians and Persians take away less and less. The wealth gets smaller. The fortress cities become fewer. And even then, when they're wasted, it doesn't even seem like it was much of a fight, that God just gave it to their enemies. I think that this is one of those broader ideas that people severely underestimate within real politic. Um, just because God does one thing in the Bible doesn't mean that he doesn't do it for just about everyone else, and especially for places that know better. Um, Much of what I think England is experiencing now is a mimicry of their experience under the abandonment of Rome. Heathen hordes, weak kings, um, population that's being devoured. Like, well, let me just write. What do you think of what I said while I prepare the next segment?
Uh, I'm thinking it over. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't have a, I. My problem with Idols of the King is that it is just kind of too good. Is almost how I would describe it. So, what I mean is, what do I have to say about it? It's really good. Um, is it profound? I do think I haven't finished it, right? Supposedly it gets profound. I don't think it is profound yet. Um I think this is the setup, right? And as far as setup goes, I think it does a really good job of Britons in chaos who have all of these petty lords warring with each other. They don't trust they don't trust Arthur, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't think that they're suspicious of his lineage, which admittedly is pretty shadowy.
Mm.
Like, oh, you pulled the sword from the stone. Well, what does that mean? And right? Like, you claim to be Uther's son, but how have we not heard of you, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so admittedly, it is pretty shadowy, but Arthur is, winning renown and doing these great things and beating back the barbarians and putting all of the bad kings into line, right? It's all set up. It's all very good.
Mm-hmm.
It's all very well done. I particularly like the romance set up with Guinevere. It's love at first sight done well, right?
Mm.
Uh, it's part of this, I think, is going into what we were talking about poetry. It's like a lot of these things would be not very interesting to tell, except for the fact that Tennyson is a gifted poet, right?
Right.
Um, so he's telling things in a not, he's telling, like, I don't want to say not particularly interesting things, but because it is interesting, but things that have been told before, right? Told in,
Yes.
the Lamore Day Arthur and T.H. White, which was after him, obviously, but still, same idea, right? Stuff you've read before. So what's the change? Like, what is the spin that Tennyson's giving it? Well, there isn't one in the telling itself. It's very straightforward. The spin is that Tennyson is a gifted poet, and the way he is telling the story is just very lovely. And it's interesting. It goes into, like, you'll often see people complain about poems that don't rhyme, right? Um, and the Idylls of the King mostly does not rhyme, right?
Mm.
But nobody could ever read this and not tell immediately that it is a poem, right? Like, it's
That's
not
right.
prose. Like, you would never read this and go, this is just like messed up free verse or whatever. Like, that's insanity. Is very clearly poetry. So in what way? Well, in meter. Now, I got a book on meter because, again, like you, I am trying to learn poetry properly. Um,
Mm. I'm not.
and
I'm
I
not
must
putting that
admit,
much
this
effort
is,
into it.
what was that?
I'm not putting that much effort into it. To be clear, I'm not buying any extra books. I'm just enjoying the poetry.
I am. I would like to get this kind of under my belt, right? Like, I would
Yes.
like to, um, as a skill, as a writer, like, a good writer should be a good poet. It will
Yes.
also improve your prose.
Oh yeah.
Um, like John C. Wright, I don't know of him writing any poems, but I bet you if we asked him to compose something on the spot, he'd come up with a 10 of 10 in 30 seconds.
Sure. We could bring
Uh,
him on to talk it. He actually has poetry in the beginning of most of his books.
doesn't he normally quote other poets, though?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Oh, yes. Um, I mean, as far as, yeah, I don't know the meter, and this is one thing. It is a blind spot in my ear. Um, a cynical man would say that I am too white for this, but I have no rhythm.
Mm.
Uh, a more intelligent man would point out that I am not white. I am Italian, but that's not very helpful in this case.
Well, Italians have their own skills.
Yes,
Day drinking wine and murdering each other over women.
yes. I mean, we do have opera, but whatever. Point being, I am really bad at identifying rhythm, to the point
Mm-hmm.
where I've argued with people where I'm like half convinced that that everybody who says, "Oh, this is an iambic pentameter," I'm like, you're just making that shit up. You're just saying it in a way like, "Oh, look, the emphasis on this word." Yeah, the emphasis on any word if you say it with an emphasis. Yeah. So I don't know. All of this is to say I don't know the meter. I don't know the rhythm of the poem, but it very clearly has one.
Sure.
What do
What's
you
an
think, man?
example? It definitely has a rhythm. I'm not going to say like I'm trained enough to know or to name all the different rhythms and stuff like that. But there's a if you to read it, uh, here's one of the lines that really impressed me. Um, so they're describing the wilderness of Camelard, the kingdom of King Leodegrance. And it says, and ever and anon the wolf would steal the children and devour, but now and then her own brood, lost or dead, lent her feet fierce teat to human sucklings, and the children housed in her foul den, there at their meat would growl, and mock their foster mother on 4 feet, till, straightened, they grew up to wolf-like men, worse than the wolves. And it doesn't stop at worse than the wolves. There's more in that line, but there's a period there. Um, like you can hear that there's a natural rhythm within the lines uh, that forces itself as you read it out into the world. Like, sure, I can put emphasis on any line. Can't let's see here. Um, from the lines I read, and ever and anon, the wolf would steal. Like that doesn't work. But going something like and ever and anon, the wolf would steal, the children and devour. It has a beat to it that I think we're in the modern sort of world um, are sort of spoiled by things like rap, um, which just so you like, I just got to get this off my chest real quick. For some reason, those fake AI companies with like, oh, get your AI girlfriend from us kind of thing, have been like using like Eminem's rapping. And like, I'm not even sure they modified it. I think they just straight up stole it.
Stole
Thank
is
you.
the word you're looking for, Ben.
Thank you very much. Uh, they're getting weirder too. Uh, and so it's like, yeah, sure, there's a rhythm there that's immediately recognizable. There's an understanding on how this rhythm interacts with the words that Eminem is speaking forth like a cultist chanting. But in reality, you know, if you were to say, "Oh, is it 5/5 time?" You know, you'd actually have to be specially trained as a musician, you know, as a poet to really understand it. Um, However, I don't think that it's the same kind of thing. So like there's there's the rapping beat, but the rapping beat requires a certain like power and loudness and more to it that you just don't need in poetry. So like when it's like da 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 da, you know, from that one Eminem song, um, you know, he's actually not doing some like the beat is complex and the wording is complex, but how they interact is not that complex. He's just matching the syllables mostly to the beats within the music itself. Does that make sense? Are you there, Anthony?
Yes, I am. Sorry,
Yeah, but
I turned off to the side. But please repeat what you just said. I got distracted by something.
it better be your
No.
wife doing something adorable, or it's just not worth it. Uh, so the the beat of something like Eminem's music where he has that song that goes da 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 da. He actually doesn't really do anything with the beat other than say the syllables on the beat. At least not that much, not that noticeably. Um, so it's a different sort of thing than poetry, which has a tempo of the words themselves. Which again, I'm not training myself to worry about it, even though I probably should. Um, it's like if you say the emphasis, well the thing is that the emphasis is actually not the emphasis of a rap song, which is very bold and brash, but rather a more subtle emphasis of highs and lows. Rather than the wave crashing and overpowering, it's the gentle lapse of a calm lake. How about that?
Yes, I would agree. You kind of fall into a rhythm when you say these lines, right? Like just
Yep.
like you would with a good reading of Shakespeare. Like one thing that you'll notice if you anybody who knows Shakespeare and goes, "Oh, Shakespeare's so difficult to understand." There's a certain thing where if you read him enough, something slots in your mind and you get into the rhythm of the language and
Mm-hmm.
suddenly it becomes a lot easier. And it's not so much that every individual line is suddenly more comprehensible, but when you hear it all together with the rhythm of the language, you know what's going on, right? Does that make any sense? This was at least
Yes.
my experience with Shakespeare. I vividly remember it like in school or something, like listening to Othello and being very bored, and then like suddenly the language clicked in my head and it got really interesting, right? Because I had just was listening to enough Shakespeare
It's like
that.
that Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme. I get it now.
Yeah, exactly. Um, the always sunny mean. Oh my god, I get it. Uh, Same sort of thing. Like, but genuinely, you get the same sort of thing when you read. I think Tennyson, even though they're obviously very, very different times and people and places, but like this whole section. I'm just looking up. This is almost not quite a random page, but almost a random page. I'm just looking for something that had like the rhythm. But let me tell thee now another tale. For Blythe, our Merlin's master, as they say, died but of late, and sent his cry to me to hear him speak before he left his life. Shrunk like a fairy changeling lay the mage, and when I entered, told me that himself. And Merlin ever served about the king, Uther before he died, and on the night when Uther and Tintagel passed away, moaning and wailing for an heir, the two left the still king, and passing forth to breathe, then from the castle gateway by the chasm, descending through the dismal night, a night in which the bounds of heaven and earth were lost, beheld so high upon the dreary deeps. It seemed in heaven a ship the shape thereof, a dragon winged, and all from stern to stern, bright with a shining people on the decks. Now, without realizing it, you read that whole section, and again, it's like semi-random. I stopped in the middle of the sentence, right? Like it's just telling them about Arthur's birth and Uther, right? Like and how Merlin helped engineer it. Yeah. Uh, okay. You notice as you do it, you start saying it in a rhythm, right? Dun 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 dun. That's the iambic pentameter thing that people will often talk about with Shakespeare, and I don't know if this is iambic pentameter or another type of rhythm. Again, there are other types, it's like trochaic pentameter or something. There's all sorts of things. Um, and I don't know which one this is. I don't have the ear for it yet. But nevertheless, the rhythm is very clear, and you kind of only get it when you read a bunch of it together. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It makes it first off, this is definitely the sort of thing that is better to be read out loud, or at least if you are very imaginative to try and hear the rhythm in your head.
Mm. Poetry in general should be read out loud. Like you can read it alone, but I think that like by visual alone, but I think that misses out on just the special nature of it. Uh, it's kind of like reading a play by itself. It's like, yeah, you can do that. It's not like I haven't read Shakespeare by itself, but watching it performed is just so much better.
Yeah, it's very different. It's not, they're two fundamentally different experiences.
Mm,
And people will talk about this too. It goes even as far as like if you listen to an audiobook versus reading a book versus hearing it, like
yeah,
things like the Iliad, the Odyssey, Idylls, the poetry, right? That's
yeah,
something you should hear. Books, ideally, you can hear them, and you are. I would refer to that as if somebody asked me, let's say I listened to an audiobook. This is like the case I actually did this with The Land Across, right? I listened to the audiobook of it. It's a Gene Wolfe book. Um, and you go, well, have you read The Land Across? I would answer something like I've finished the book or I've experienced the book. I wouldn't because I didn't read it. Those are two different things, right? You get
right.
something different out of it. Uh, I wouldn't say I do think that that gives me enough credit to be like, yes, I do know the book, right? Like
Hmm.
I know what happened in it. I heard all of the words. I know the language. Um, but you can do things, and especially with an author like Gene Wolfe, by the way, who, as Neil Gaiman, accursed be his name, uh, but as he
Slash
did
spit.
correctly point out, yeah, we spit as we say his name, right? But as he did correctly point out, Gene Wolfe is the sort of author who is not read but reread, right?
Yes.
Like one reading of Gene Wolfe, frankly, is not enough to understand what you just read, or to fully appreciate it.
Yeah.
And listening to an audiobook, I think, is going to dilute the experience even more. Now, The Land Across happens to be one of his more comprehensible works, which is not saying a lot because it is utterly baffling on many, many levels.
I don't get. I need a second to rant here. I don't get why people say that the famous one, the Book of the New Sun, is so confusing. It's like he talks about it. He talks about like some things that are going to happen are so mysterious, right? Like I don't get what's going to happen. Um, but at the same time, it's like he's so mysterious, and he's like, "Yes, this is my grave. This I felt that this was my grave," and then it turns out to be his grave from the future. It's like, how is this like the mysterious part of it? Like why are you making such hay over the dude going, this is a mystery? It almost feels like it's a part of me, and then it turns out to be a part of him. I don't know, maybe it just doesn't have the effect on me that it does on other people, but
I'm not gonna lie, I could not bring myself to finish Book of the New Sun. I've tried a few times.
I'm somewhere almost done with book one, or whatever, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. But yeah, what's funny is The Land Across is considered one of his more comprehensible books, and it is utterly baffling.
Yeah.
Uh, which is saying, and I would agree, by the way, I would both agree that it is one of his more comprehensible books, and go like, yeah, I have no clue what happened in it or why, or it's the story of like a
Yeah.
man goes into some sort of Kafka-esque East uh, European country that he leaves unnamed, and he supposedly is a writer of travel books, and the reason he wants to enter the country is so that he could write a chapter on the country, which doesn't make any fucking sense because like travel is almost forbidden in this country. Like it's borderline forbidden, right? Like as soon as he arrives, they steal his passport and basically keep him like trapped in the country while the secret police follows him everywhere. Uh and like he maintains the entire book that the reason he's there was to write the chapter of a travel manual. And then you learn there's some sort of like secret cult of like I don't know, vampires or something, or like child sacrificers. And they say,
Right.
and one of the reviews I read pointed out that the great trick of the book is that this Kafka-esque government that stole our protagonist's passport the second he crossed the border. By the end of the book, you are on their side because they're going up against the like human sacrifice vampire cult.
Right.
But yeah, it's really interesting. Like the main, sorry, I know we're kind of off topic, but it's our
Well,
show.
no, no, no.
Uh,
Yeah, we're talking about like reading and rereading and stuff like that. Idols of the King should be reread for its beauty, not necessarily its plot complexity. Um,
Yet, I will say yet. I have seen people talking about the ending, and I really like some of what they've said, like some of the changes that Tennyson makes. And I don't want to say Arthur is for the ending. I think that's not true, and that doesn't really fit historically either, because frankly, most of Arthur isn't the ending, right? Um,
right,
and most of what people appreciated about the Arthur stories were not the ending of it. But
right.
I think it's also true that the ending is a very, nailing the ending of your Arthur story is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would go so far as to say, like, we're going to talk about this later, but Lawhead's Pendragon Cycle is not a perfect series, but the way that he ends the Arthur section of the story, and what I mean is he has a book called Avalon, which is not that great, which takes place in the modern day, but the way he ends the Arthur section of his story is so good, it kind of makes you forgive a lot of the rest of it because it's just so done so well. Same with T.H. White for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I think that The Sword in the Stone is okay. The Queen of Air and Darkness is a little bit better. The Ill-Made Night is a masterpiece. And The Candle in the
Right,
Wind is almost as good as The Ill-Made Night. And one of the reasons The Candle in the Wind is so good is that the ending is very moving.
right.
And it's the same with Tennyson, from what I can understand. I've seen people talk about it. He makes some changes, like how Arthur deals with Guinevere. Somebody posted this on Twitter a few months ago or something, and I remember being really, like, honestly, really liking it. I read it and thought this is a great idea. I really like this. He meets Guinevere again after Lancelot and Guinevere escape. And they said the key here, and this is one of the problems I've always had with kind of the classic Arthurian legend, is that Arthur is a cuck, right?
Right.
Um, and that's not necessarily, when I say a problem, it's not an insoluble problem or like a problem in the in sense of a flaw. It's more like a problem in terms of like how we view it, right? Like
Yes.
what sort of a person Arthur is. It can be resolved in various ways, some very successfully and some less so, right? Okay. Um, well, the way that Tennyson resolves it, supposedly, again, I haven't gotten there, but I really like the way this person said it, is he meets Guinevere, he condemns her for her sin, they said, but the way they put it is, what Arthur does here is retakes the moral high ground by forgiving Guinevere. So he
Nice.
takes the step of going, you committed this sin, you are the guilty party, I am a better Christian man than Lancelot or you. I choose to forgive you.
He's certainly a better Christian man than Guinevere.
A better
Sorry.
Christian. Yeah,
Yeah, I
whatever.
know, I know, I know. Sorry. Keep going.
Same with Lancelot, right? Like, I'm a better Christian than you. I choose to forgive you, and I thus reclaim
Yes.
the moral high ground. Uh,
Yes.
that's great. I love that, right? And in
It is.
some
It's
ways, it
perfect.
resolves the issue.
Yep.
Arthur has reclaimed his standing as the exemplar of humanity by doing this. In
Which,
my version of the story, the
yeah,
way that
in
I
your,
resolve it is he moves to execute Guinevere.
yep.
He does it
Well,
kind
no,
of. Go ahead.
it's, sorry, it's the appropriate reaction. Like, he doesn't do it out of wrath. He does it, it's
Oh
like,
yes, yes.
people are dead because of this. Like,
Well, I wrote the story, Ben.
did you?
I'm the one that I'm talking about.
The same one I read and gave you advice on?
Yes.
Oh, never mind. Keep going.
It's like no, Ben. I know you're correct.
Does the audience know, Anthony?
Yes. This is the last sacrifice of Guinevere is the name of the chapter in the book. I am a fan, by the way, of the Isaac Young school of talking about spoilers, which is I don't give a shit. Uh, so Isaac Young is like, yeah, so this is the love interest, this is her personality, this is how it's gonna end. I
Yes.
don't give a shit, and I appreciate this. It shows confidence. It's very
I can't.
Chad.
It is low key. I'm. He's gonna go places if he doesn't give into Zoomer despair.
Yes, which I worry for him sometimes, but uh he'll be
He'll
fine. He'll work it
be
out.
fine. It'll be
Okay,
fine.
anyway. Yeah, in my version of the story with Guinevere, Arthur has her executed. And the reason he has her executed, the scene was very deliberately crafted. I think that I did a pretty decent job with it. If I don't believe in false modesty. I'm gonna be like, yeah, no, I thought I did pretty well. Uh, right, like in the scene, as when Guinevere, he has Guinevere in her tower, and Arthur confronts her on the affair. I was
Yeah.
very specific with the way that Guinevere spoke about it. The first thing that she does is try to deflect responsibility, right? And then when Arthur goes like, I was very young, I barely knew love, and he goes, okay, but you've been married for years, so do you not love me? Is that what you're trying to say? Like you never really loved me? And then she goes, well,
Mm,
no, that I did love you. He goes, all right, so that's not it, right? Like you're making an excuse. That doesn't work, right? So now what? What do you have for me, right? And she goes, okay, well, you were gone, and Lancelot loved me, and it's right, like, and goes,
right.
okay, so, and goes, well, surely you can understand, you can forgive me, and Arthur goes, no, basically, like, I can forgive you, right? But he goes, but you're going to be executed. She goes, but
Right.
why? And then he goes, because you don't understand why what you did was wrong. And the
Yes.
reason, as Arthur puts it, it's to save your soul. This is the classical Christian idea behind execution, right?
Yes.
It is not in vogue. Uh, in Catholic circles, there is a big debate on it due to edits in the catechism and wording from recent popes. But then there are philosophers and theologians like Dr. Fazer, uh, who we have had our issues with on certain issues with Trump on Twitter, but who I still respect greatly as a philosopher. Uh,
Yep.
and he argues that it's too firmly entrenched in the Christian tradition to be completely rejected in the way that is. I would tend to agree with him on this
Yes.
point. So when and either way, it doesn't even really matter though because this takes place in medieval England, right? So, uh, Arthur is using the classical idea of execution, which is that it was a way to force the condemned to think about last things and to move them towards repentance, right?
Right.
Now, Arthur, we can assume, being a moral sort of man, is being very serious about this, right?
Right.
Excuse me. He's being very, he is being very he is being very serious about why he's doing it. Like he's not just saying this and he's doing it out of revenge. Is what I'm trying to get at, right? Like,
Right. Which is
Arthur really is trying to save Guinevere's soul. That is his goal. And
right.
that is why the execution is a matter of justice. Guinevere in the story thinks that there is a very good chance that she'll just be shipped off to a nunnery, which would not be a terrible outcome for her considering her circumstances. But Arthur says no. And the reason that Arthur says no is he says, like, you're not going to learn why what you did was wrong if you skate away from consequences. Right?
Yeah. Which is kind of the big thing. Like, you can't repent if you don't think you did anything wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very tricky, and it's one of the big problems in the modern world, I think, more than any other. This is why, like, you see this a lot with like theologians talking about it's the gospel, the good news, and you go, really? Because it sounds like, if you think about it, really horrible news. Like we're all condemned or whatever. Like, yeah, okay, but what you need to understand is that the gospel is responding to what all humans universally understood to be the case, right?
Yeah.
Like the gospel, when it calls itself the good news, only us degenerate moderns are here thinking like, well, why do we even need to be saved at all? Why do we even need the good news? Nobody at the time would have thought that. They all knew, because
Right.
frankly, like they didn't live in a modern world with modern marvels and wonders, right? They were looking
Right.
around them, seeing, you know, infants dying, people dying of disease, death is just constant and around every corner, armies conquering, right? Like, no
Yep.
shit, this world isn't what it's supposed to be. And now we're kind of getting back to that in the modern age. We had that brief period of kind of Pax Americana, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's ending.
Yep.
And
And it's
with it
it's
ending,
it's
we're starting to see people have that same thing of like something has gone terribly wrong. When in
yeah.
reality, we're just kind of getting back to how humanity always was.
Yeah. Like the like we're talking of things in the past and there's these things in the future and all this jazz. But like if you look at the crowds in like say Minneapolis right now or what they're trying to do in Maine, but it's just too cold to do it in Maine. Um where they're rushing around, the crowd is crying out for things that is actively hating them. Um like they got Somalians and they imported Somalia and then deported all of our money, that our tax money, that was given to them to Somalia. Like it's you like it's a more natural way of living than to deny the reality of how people act. The crowds calling out for their worst is normal. Like there were several points in like the Roman Empire and the Greeks where they just exiled people or murdered them because they hated them. Drusus the Younger murdered for trying to give the Italians the vote, even though the Italians had fought in the wars and had sacrificed much and many and were equal to Roman soldiers in many regard. Or you look at exiling people, from the Athenian democracy, just because they didn't like them. Alcibiades, for example, who they loved or hated depending on the phase of the moon, it seemed like. The that's a normal thing to be, and when we had Pax Americana, we had mostly one people or one agreement that all the diverse peoples of America agreed to. Even things like the Italian and Irish voting machines, the Italian mob and the Irish voting machine. uh, didn't really destroy our democracy or have too much of a threat against it. The second the military and FBI got serious about the mob, they started cracking skulls. Um, the only thing that we knew, Al Capone was doing all the evil that he did, but we were men of the law, and so we didn't just burst in and kill him, even though he richly deserved it, and it would not have broken any moral law to do so. um, things should be done under the law which God gives us. But frankly, a man who flouts it uh, deserves it. Especially with like what we see today with like Don Lemon bragging on his podcast and so on that he isn't going to be touched. He needs to be arrested. He needs to be in chains. The law, the real law, not the law of judges, needs to be upheld. It's like what I opened with, with the thing, the land is becoming a wasteland. People are unable to feel confidence in their world around them. If you go online, it looks like sound and fury, and then you talk to people, and everyone has an opinion about it. It's not going to end well. You have to be comfortable with bad things happening. I'm sure uh, that it was uncomfortable to see Lancelot or whoever charge through and slay the wicked knight, who ruled your land. um but at the same time, it's better for that to happen than injustice continue. It's 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 difficult to sort of accept it, but it is something you'll have to accept. The crowds demand bread and circuses, and if they can only get one, they prefer the circus.
Yes. Yeah, no. I don't disagree. Like we're watching what's interesting is when we read all of these epic poems, every single one of them, all of them, no matter how old they are, they all talk of some sort of mythical golden age in the past, right?
Yep.
The Iliad is very famous for this. They mention that like the men of old used to be able to lift twice as much or something. I can't remember the
And
exact
it's
words.
like you're the Iliad.
Yes,
To us it is the ultra mythic age. But continue.
right. And the Age of Arthur is no different. This is why, like, trying to find an exact point of history where Arthur would have existed is kind of missing the point of it, I think. Now, I am interested in like historicity of Arthur. We've talked about before G.K.
Hmm.
Chesterton's excellent poem, "The Myth of Arthur," is excellent
Right.
and makes the point that this idea that there was no origin point of the myth, but the reality of like where Arthur originated is we kind of know, and it's Aurelius, right?
Yes.
It's a combination of Aurelius, the Arthur who is mentioned as having been at the Battle of Badon, which by the way Aurelius led. So it's still an Aurelius connection. Probably they just realized that an Arthur was mentioned at Badon, and they thought it was someone who wasn't Aurelius, but all of the details of the story matched Aurelius. So
Yep.
Aurelius is Arthur. Um, I would go. Would I go as far as to say Aurelius is Arthur? Probably. I think that
Hmm.
that's pretty much it. Like, I do kind of think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like, where the Arthur story originated, like, where this idea of, like, oh, a great high king united everyone, it was Aurelius. Aurelius was the guy.
Yep.
Uh, so I don't think it's not so much that I think there's nothing to the historical question, is that I think we have the answer, and I think it kind of disappoints people because they go like, well, is that it? And
Yeah.
it's like,
That's
well,
it.
yeah,
uh,
yes, but also you're kind of missing the point. Like when Geoffrey Monmouth wrote the history of the kings of Britain, right? And then when
yeah.
Mallory compiled everything together into the Lamort d'Artour, uh, because again, the Lamort d'Artour was not an original composition of Mallory per se; it was a compilation, which is why it's so
Hmm.
long. But anyway, like when they did this, the way that they thought of Arthur was like this golden age in their past, right?
Yes.
A golden age that probably didn't really fully exist in the way that we would think. Because does any golden age really exist, right?
Right.
There was a great post I read years ago from it was just some guy, but he made a point that I thought was really great, and it was called the Eternal Jeremiad. And they said that every doomsayer and every Jeremiah is correct. And by this, what he says, if you're in an age that is everything is going too well, then the men will have gotten decadent and evil. And if you are in another age, then you're in another age and things aren't going well. And he goes, is this a way
Yep.
of saying, like, oh, well, then, you shouldn't be complaining? It's like, no, it's the opposite. I am saying that Jeremiah is always right.
Yes.
Like, which is, I think that that's exactly it. And it's the same thing when you talk about Arthur. When they look back on a mythical golden age, that golden age didn't exist, right? There is no such thing. We very famously, you could say, like, you can only identify a golden age after it's over. Nobody in the 80s thought they were living in the peak of American civilization. Uh, I mean, Reagan liked to yell about it, but there was plenty of stuff. There were plenty of people around at the time who were very strongly disputing it, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's
Nobody.
gag in the cartoon Inside Job where they go back to the 80s and it's like nostalgia and mind altering chemicals and the markers and then at the end of it the last gag from the tribe of interesting people stuck in the 80s is that's right, and we have nostalgia for the time where everything was perfect and great and America was the best, the 50s.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, sure, all right.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And 50s was 20s nostalgia, I believe.
Yep.
Uh,
Pre-depression.
well, pre-depression. Yeah, exactly. Like, and pre-war. Yeah.
Yep.
But the point being, like, nobody really knows they're in a golden age until the golden age is over and we can look back on it with the benefit of history. And then
Yep.
you look at like medieval Europe was a golden age and you go like, okay, well, like there was a point where St. Vincent Ferrer supposedly was getting like visions from God saying if you don't convert all of Europe to Christianity again, the apocalypse is going to come early, right?
Right.
Like this was a thing. It was known at the time. Chesterton makes this point when Saint Francis arose. He said when Saint Francis kind of became and started the Franciscan order, and he did it at the same time as the Dominicans started. It was the origin of the mendicant orders in the Catholic Church, the wandering preachers.
Yeah.
Uh, Chesterton makes this point in his biography of Saint Francis of Assisi that the church was old at the time that Francis has done it. Frankly, it was old and it was stale. Like that
Yes.
was kind of the point, right? This is hundreds of years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Practically a
And it's like
thousand,
what
quite
Francis
frankly.
did was reinvigorate the church.
Yeah.
So, this is all just to say, like, when we read these stories of Arthur and we go, like, I'm not saying that Britain didn't think Arthur was real. There was definitely a period of time where they were convinced of it. The History of the Kings of Britain was a convincing looking document for people,
Yeah.
even though it was nonsensical fiction from Geoffrey of Monmouth. Uh,
Well, no, I mean,
yes, not entirely.
well, and also like it's like they had places where everyone agreed there was the grave of Arthur. The Avalon thing is relatively recent. Um, and kings like I think Henry II and others, you know, LARPed, and they spent a great deal of time LARPing. It's like Alexander the Great, like LARPing over the graves and stuff like that. Um, it's like Alexander the Great picking up the armor of Achilles at the ruins of Troy. It's like, yeah, it. How do I want to put it? It's LARPing in a way, but honestly, it's a more genuine reaction than just saying, oh, it didn't happen at all, actually. well, what if we said earlier that Aurelius is probably Arthur, as inspired, a mix of Arthur the war chief and Aurelius the king. um like I would put something on that. But at the same time, if it's like, yes, this is the grave of Arthur the war chief, oh well, he wasn't Arthur the king, so I guess it's all just stupid larping. That's Reddit shit. That's Reddit tier
Oh, yeah, yeah.
nonsense.
Like,
Like it's like, no,
there is a
it's
history there. Like, again,
yeah,
Aurelius is very real.
right,
And what he did was very real, and the things that they were like admired Arthur for were things that were very real values in the to the British, you know.
yeah,
But was there a round table? Was there, right, like all of these things? I mean,
yeah,
probably not. And they had like extremely detailed, there were these historical things that were just not true. You're right. Arthur supposedly his grave is at Glastonbury Tor.
yeah.
Uh and that's also supposedly where Avalon is, by the way. Like something like that, because Tor is lake, right?
No, it's
Uh
a protruding hill slash mountain in the
I'm
plain.
confusing two things. I'm
Mm-hmm.
Googling this now. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Uh it has nothing to do with my point. The point being, like, yeah, like there are historians. I do think that there's some like there's a historian who I quite like, by the way. I had his book about like the quote unquote real Arthur, Jeffrey Ash.
Yeah,
He theorized that Arthur was a king called Riothamus. Over the years, scholars have like looked more and more deeply into it, and I don't want to say debunked is not really the right word, but they've kind of rejected
right.
that theory. There was also an Arthur from Ireland, but again, like the only real thing he has in common with Arthur was that he was a high king in Ireland,
He
and
was like,
he
it's
shared the
coping.
name.
It's Irish coping, is
Yes,
what it
and he
is.
shared the name. Uh, there was like a
Yep.
Roman war chief, but all of these things like are really honest fits the most points, right?
Yeah.
Like if there is an origin point to the legend, it's a really honest. And it's not that he didn't do things that weren't admirable. It's not that he didn't have values that weren't real and that the British admired, but looking into like, oh, this is the guy who is Arthur, it kind of misses the point of what the Arthur stories are about, which is a national legend for Britain. Tolkien
Yep.
famously rejected the Arthur stories as a national legend for Britain. He tried to make them work. He has his own Arthur poem, that is unfinished. But
Oh,
did you not know this?
no, I didn't.
Oh, I'm very surprised. I'll link it to you. He
I
has an
appreciate
unfinished
it.
Arthur poem, "The Fall
Mm,
of Arthur." It
pretty
was
cool.
the first edition of it was published in 2013.
I
But
like
yeah,
Tolkien, but I'm
I've
not.
read through it.
Yeah.
Uh, uh the Fall of Arthur, yeah, Tolkien famously, he didn't really think that it worked as a myth for Britain because he thought that it was too French.
Yep.
Too much French influence got
Yeah.
mixed in with it. Um with all due respect to the great professor who is a better man and writer than I will ever be, but I must disagree with him on this point.
Mm,
The French elements were added later. Arthur,
yep.
the Arthur and the matter of art of Britain is part of the British cultural heritage and has been for many centuries.
Yes. It's like, even if some parts of it are French, what actually are the French parts of it? Well, Lancelot is the big thing, but also things like Guinevere cheating on Arthur with Lancelot and stuff
Which
like
again
that,
is Lancelot.
which again is Lancelot. Uh, you you can say, yeah, that's very French, courtly manners and stuff like that. But the thing is that courtly manners was a thing that affected England completely as well. Like, even though the Normans weren't necessarily French, as in Franks, they adopted French culture, French ideas, French courtly manners. England was a vassal of France, just like England tried to take over France later. Um, it's uh, Like the idea that you can view England apart from France in a cultural like influence kind of way is kind of silly. Like if you say, okay, well, there's no connection between like China and England in culture. The answer is yes. That's right. How they drink their tea is different. How they eat fish is different. Like even though you can say, well, they're both tea drinkers, very polite in some ways, everything about them is different. But like in the middle ground, you have things like Japan. If somebody's like Japanese culture is not affected by American culture at all, absolutely nonsense. Japan or America files. They love a lot of things about America, uh, kept in America, to be clear. Um, but they have like how can you explain different American characters and how they show up? The gag being be the American the Japanese believe you to be. There's a certain harmony between Japanese and American cultures. Like take the whole like Chainsaw Man arc, where like it would almost be more obvious if she showed up in like the American style bikini that a lot of fan art puts Yoru in, with the American flag and stuff like that. Like
Nice.
it's fantastic. It's on the nose. So it's like you can see that there's different cultures, and on the extreme end of like super affecting each other, England and French culture, while they retained their individual ideas and spirits and all this jazz, but especially in medieval times, they were constantly cross contaminating each other. And France was contaminating English culture way more than English culture was contaminating France. You can say that some of the legends like King Arthur was the contamination from England to France, but not things like courtly love, um, technology, and how courtly manners evolved. Anyway, that's my rant against the good professor.
Yes, I would tend to agree with you on this. And it's interesting because Tolkien abandoned his Arthur poem when he wrote The Hobbit. So when he decided, I'm going to do one myself, that's even better.
Yes.
Uh, right. So, which does make sense. But yeah, Tennyson's version, if you look at reviews of it, which I did, they'll
Mm.
describe his Arthur as like the ideal Victorian king. Personally, in reading him and looking through this, he strikes me as simply very Christian.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't really see anything specifically Victorian, though I suppose it's just to say that the ideal Victorian was an ideal Christian, which is to the credit of the Victorians.
I agree with that completely. People like so oh don't you know the Victorians are like this and they had whores and everything like that. Well, it's like yeah, but also they had a church in every street corner, and they did, how do I want to put it, like whatever the hypocrisies that are natural to sinful man, if like it would be insulting to them to be called non-Christian even if you caught them in sin. It's like absolutely not. Well, but you're sinning, and then you could, like many of the like especially Protestant Christian reformers, um, who were witnessing to people and running things. Oftentimes, when you called Victorians out, they would feel that pang of guilt. They're like, I guess I haven't been acting as a Christian should. They would genuinely feel it. And reform their actions at least for a day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading. It's quite refreshing how explicitly Christian Idylls of the King is. Like, they have this
Mm,
section near the end of the introduction. The king will follow Christ, and we the king, in whom high God hath breathed a secret thing. Fall battle axe and flash brand, let the king rang. So sang the
yes.
knighthood, moving to their hall. They're at the banquet, those great lords from Rome. I lost my mouse. Here it is. The slowly fading mistress of the world strode in and claimed their tribute as of yore. But Arthur spake, Behold, for these have sworn to wage my wars and worship me their king. The old order changeth, yielding place to new. And we that fight for our fair Father Christ, seeing that ye be grown too weak and old to drive the heathen from your Roman wall, no tribute will we pay. So those great lords drew back in wrath, and Arthur strove with Rome. So Arthur, being a man of honor and a Christian, sees that Rome itself is growing weaker and says, "I refuse to take tribute to I refuse to pay you tribute since we are driving the heathen from your walls." And Arthur defends Rome. So
Mm,
he is the ideal Christian king, which is how Arthur is meant to be presented.
yeah. The idea that Arthur can be anything else other than the ideal Christian king is completely misunderstanding the story. Like whatever pagan roots and things like, Merlin or whatever is imagined, almost hallucinated to be there. Fundamentally, you cannot understand Arthur if you don't have a conception of Christianity or of Christ, especially. Uh, it-
Yeah,
what?
the thing about Merlin too, like Merlin is what's funny about Merlin and people trying to claim that Merlin is pagan, which is complete nonsense, right? Merlin is in
Mm-hmm.
fact one of the few Arthurian figures who we can very concretely root to a real person, right?
Right.
Um he was like a wild man and a wise man from the early Middle Ages
Mm.
who he like went mad and was living in the forest, and then he became renowned as like a hermit and a wise man. He was very much a Christian. Now you will sometimes see scholars go, oh well, maybe he was pagan and they didn't want to admit it because there are kind of some similarities with pagans. This is the most ridiculous cope. And you could think of it this way: let's say they're right, it doesn't even matter because all of the writing we have of this early Merlin, whose name is Mirvin, uh all this writing that we have of Mirvan, who is a very real person, um, is that he was a Christian, which means that is how the people who remembered his legend and wrote it down and interpreted it wanted it to be, right?
Yep.
So even if he was pagan, which we have absolutely zero evidence of, it is pure cope. Uh,
Yep.
but even if he was like, oh, there are some similarities with pagans, like, what the fuck does that mean? There have been
Yep.
hermits since the 200s in Christianity.
Yep. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
pagan roots. Uh, but even
Man, be a
besides that, it
hermit.
doesn't really
Mm.
matter because that's not how the people of the time interpreted him. So no, Merlin is Christian. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Yep. And that's how it should always be interpreted. Like the idea of like pagan this, pagan that is cope, like we said. And it's a desire for like something that just isn't there but isn't God at the same time. Like I read, Julius Evola, Ride the Tiger and all that jazz, and I came away with the idea that no matter what people say about Evola and his wisdom and all this jazz, and he did speak to something of the heart and of the heroic character, is that fundamentally Christ met everything that he wanted out of a king, and he rejected him on his Judaism, which, there is a verse that says, it's a stumbling block to people, especially their pride. Um, him being of Jewish descent. It's 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 hard to explain to somebody who hasn't like studied the mindset, but fundamentally, to be a Christian is to understand some things that are wrong about yourself. In other words, that you are wrong between yourself and God, that you are not quite what you could be because of your sin nature. um but at the same time, it's like to overcome through being a strenuous, heroic character, is itself part of the Christian life. If you were to take the pagan men of the Middle Ages, charged towards the churches to loot them, but once it became, but once they could be witnessed to, and they weren't just like killing everyone. Uh, once they sat down and listened, they actually converted in droves. Yeah, sure, a lot of them probably converted because the king converted, but at the same time, they didn't like secretly keep their religion. They threw it all away. That's the biggest argument against, oh, they were actually crypto pagans or something ridiculous like that. Okay, so why didn't more stuff survive from that time? Well, the Victorians destroyed it. Bullshit. They loved that stuff. They loved foreign culture all the time. You have never heard how bananas they went over Egyptian stuff. They were snorting mummy powder for its medicinal effects. Don't give me that. If someone came out, I have actually discovered the full Odinic, uh, history of the pagans in Northern Europe. They would have gone bananas over that. You would have seen women dressing up like Brunhilde more than they already did. Um, Wagner would have been even more popular. Um, it's this stuff, this pagan coping is entirely false to the story. It rings as false, and if they didn't have the internet to amplify their quiet voices, they'd be completely ridiculous. It's kind of like the chalice myths. Any chalice idea that is apart from Christ is one that almost inevitably leads to I can have sex with whoever I want in the classic unchristian way. Like it's the heroes of the Iliad. Even though I wouldn't say that they'd be like, oh yeah, they'd totally become Christian. Uh, you know, they were interacting with their gods. It's a different situation. But it's like, if you had Christians in like the Iliad and stuff like that, they would have an argument that they would follow it, and they would still be the heroic character that we know them as. Someone like Diomedes or Odysseus, their character doesn't change when you apply Christian morality to them. Guys like Diomedes, what, they just become less wrathful? Odysseus is just more careful with his truth and doesn't lie as much. Is Odysseus in the lie, or is he in the heroic will to return home? And the same with
Yeah.
Arthur. Anyway, yeah,
Yeah, the other thing, like the idea of an Arthur that isn't Christian is completely nonsensical, right? Like
yes,
there is never. This is the one thing that when you talk, people go like, "Oh, you got to get back to the pagan roots." There are no pagan roots of Arthur.
right.
The
England was
very, very
completely
earliest
Christian in
version,
500.
the earliest scraps of talk that we get of an Arthur-like figure are always it is his Christianity is critical to who he is and why he's important.
Yep,
Like always, it's never not been that way.
yep,
So this idea of like getting back to the pagan roots of Arthur is just nonsense, which I think this is I think we've exhausted this very early section of Ideals of the King. I recommend it. I will continue reading it and we'll discuss more of it later, I am
yep.
sure.
Oh
But
yeah. Well,
for
it's
now,
yeah, but
let's
like
move on to sorry, go ahead.
I hold on, let me just real quick. Do you have any sections that you wanted to read
No, I read
before we
the
move
little bit
on?
at the end, which is that's enough for me.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, my notepad crashed, so never mind. Uh,
No, it's okay. You could read it later. Uh,
oh yeah,
Gareth and Lynette is the next section. I'm looking forward to it.
yeah. I like that story. It's pretty funny. Partially because Lynette is in most of the time kind of a bitch. Uh, and there's
Nice.
no nice way to put it. She like you if you remember like Fiona from the beginning of Shrek, it's like
Yes.
that.
Nice. I like it. I'm looking forward to it. I will definitely read it. So this is a good segue though when we were talking about the Christian origins of the story, the Pendragon Cycle by Stephen Lawhead. So we are not discussing the book in this case. We have in the past, I believe, but
Yes.
the show put out by the Daily Wire. So Really interesting. Now, Ben and I are on the record. We do not trust the Daily Wire as far as we can throw it, and we cannot throw it very far. Uh, we don't trust any of the people who work for the Daily Wire. We don't trust their agenda. We don't trust them, right? Like,
I have Matt Washed blocked on Twitter. Like I just don't ever want to see what he's talking about, what he's doing. I don't care that he's agreeing with me today. He's not going to agree with me tomorrow.
yes, it's uh all of this is to say though, the Pendragon cycle I am is a little bit different because I read that series years ago. I own all of the books, right? Like I had
Mm-hmm.
already pegged it as like this is one of my all-time favorite series. It's foundational to me as a writer. Stephen Lawhead, the author, responded to my review.
Oh,
Uh which was neat to he responded to my review to explain why he used all of the incomprehensible Welsh spellings of all of the characters. Uh
why? Why? What was his reasoning?
They're Welsh.
Oh,
I wish I could give you more than that, but that's the answer. He was very nice. I have nothing bad to say about him.
yeah.
Anyway, but and I gave him like it was a great review. I think I like in the review I said like this series is a masterpiece, one of my favorites. So he was nice to me as well because I was nice to him. But
Mm,
uh anyway, so when they said they were making a big epic fantasy series, I got to admit I was kind of skeptical because the Daily Wire was making it, and again, we don't trust them. Jeremy Boring was the guy who was like the head producer. His last thing had been friggin' Lady Ballers, which everybody had to pretend was good. When it was ass.
yep.
You know, sorry, I don't agree with John on this one. John said like, "Oh, it's okay." It wasn't okay. It was terrible. It was terrible, like
Mm-hmm.
unwatchably bad. But so I was not sure what to expect from this, but you know what? It was really, really good, and I figured out some of the behind the scenes as to why. And this is like 95% speculation, but speculation rooted in things that make sense to me, and that I choose to believe. So Jeremy Boring left the Daily Wire, right? Like, and
Sure.
left
Yeah.
is kind of a nice way of putting it. He was kind of forced out, which seems to happen an unusual amount of times. Gee, I wonder why. But anyway, uh, man, it's just like that Shapiro. It seems like a hard guy to get along with. But
I
anyway,
know.
uh, it doesn't matter. Point is, Jeremy Boring is forced out of the Daily Wire, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's given interviews since then where he said, like, look, if Ben needed a kidney, I'd give it to him. And I hope it would go the other way. So apparently it's not like super bad, but there were creative disagreements. Well, what were they? Well, if you watch the Pendragon cycle, it's really, really well made, suspiciously well made. Like, how on earth did they afford this?
Yes.
And it seems to me that what went on here is that this was like Jeremy Boring's magnum opus. It was like his dream, you know, kind of like me. He grew up with the Pendragon cycle and was like, I now have the chance to put this on the big screen and give it the adaptation it deserves. So he used a ridiculous amount of effort and resources to do this. And Shapiro just kind of said, no, like we can't do that. And he said, well, I'm doing it. And then they left over creative differences. And that's why when you hear like, oh, it had a troubled, you know, shoot, and there was like it took a really long time. I was convinced for a while it was not coming out because it had been announced years ago, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but it did. And it's really good. So it's like, well, then how? I think that's what happened. I think Jeremy Boring, this was his magnum opus. It was like his dream. It was, you know, his baby that he wanted to bring this into the world. And he said, I am going to move, you know, heaven and earth to get this done. And then Shapiro just was like, we can't waste all of our money on this anymore. You got to go. And he said, not till I finish it. And he finished it to his credit.
Yep.
So, what do I think of it? If you read the original book series, you'll really like it. All of everything is there the way it should be. I am most impressed with how unabashedly, unashamedly, openly Christian it is. Right? Like
Hmm.
it is incredibly Christian. Um and it is proud of it. I like that. As we all should. But mostly it's Christian in a way that isn't cringe, right?
Yes.
So all of the characters are pagans and they live in this brutal pagan world, and that's how it starts. But Christianity is like slowly on the rise and priests are showing up. Taliesin is a bard who gets visions from the gods and has some sort of powers, and then he gets a vision from the true god and gives him a prophecy that there's going to be a kingdom of summer, right? And he goes around to the different kings and sings his song of the kingdom of summer that is going to be coming and that they need to work together to bring it, and then he's killed. And that's the end of episode 2, right?
Right.
Morgayan murders him because she noticed he had magic powers and she wanted to work with him, and he rejected her for Karis, the Lady of the Lake. Uh, and his
Good
son,
man.
yes, his son, the son of him and Karis is Merlin, right? And we only see him very briefly at the end of episode 2. So all right, all of that's great, but like there are just moments in it that I really appreciate. Like for example, him and Chris have like, they have a very fast romance. Now it's a fast romance in the book as well, but the show makes it even faster, so they really are selling like the love at first sight thing. I mean, it works cuz they're both very pretty people, to be frank. Like
Oh yeah.
yeah, all right, I could get why both of them would want to hit that. Uh
Anthony.
yeah, like, I get it. Uh But there's a great scene where like Caress goes up to him and kisses him, and then they start to get on heavy, and then Taliesin pauses, turns away, and he says, I would have us be married first in the way of the Christians. And then he walks away like a Chad. And I'm like, damn. And I
Yeah.
just kind of appreciated the scene because it's done with such moral seriousness. Like there's no joke here, there's no even lampshading of it, right? Like,
Yep.
yeah, pagans would sleep with each other. We're not pagans, we're Christians. We get married first, right?
Hmm.
And that's what they do. And that's the next scene. They're like out by the lake. Carissa's in the water and she sees some sort of vision, but I think this is also her implied baptism. At the very least, it's symbolic of baptism. So the implication is she's Christian now, right? Um,
Yeah.
she gets out of the water, and then her and Taliesin get married. It is a little funny that it's the Daily Wire, though, and you could tell that they're trying to make things slightly more family friendly. And it's very subtle, to be clear here. When I'm talking about, there's a scene, for example, where he's searching for Caress, and they tell her, well, she goes bathing in the lake. He goes and finds her, and she's in the lake bathing, but she's wearing her clothes. And
Yeah.
it's like, and then, they're talking like, I'm sorry I came upon you bathing. And they act like he came on her naked. And it's like, okay, but why is she bathing in her clothes?
Right.
And this is not referenced at all, or like they never, talk about it where it's like, well, why are you in your clothes? Like apparently they're just, I don't know, her undergarments. Yeah. Um, but it's also very so like clearly this scene was meant to have her naked and they just didn't want to show it. But, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, maybe that was the right move. Maybe I don't have a problem with it. How about that? How about that, Ben?
Okay, fine. Me personally, I've been watching a lot of those Jason films, and there's a lot of sin out there, and I'm just so glad that Jason's out there killing them kids who are who are sinning against God like that.
There's a great scene
Smoking
early
weed.
on. John Delarose, who by the way has interviewed the Taliesin actor, which is a great coup for him. Good for him. Um, anyway, John Delarose mentioned it on Twitter, and he's right. He's like, this show's based, and he quoted the scene. It's a great scene where two priests are walking and they come across Karis, who is sitting in a church, and it's like a little
Yes.
tiny one room abandoned church. And they drop to their knees, and they go, "It's the because she looks ethereal, right? Again, she is an Atlantean, and Lawhead
Hmm.
makes great pains to make it clear that they are just unusually long-lived humans, but they're not. They're elves, right? Like
Right.
they are very obviously Lawhead stand-in for elves.
Yes.
Okay, so anyway, so she's like this ethereal beauty, right? So they drop to their knees and they go like, "Oh, it's the virgin, it's the virgin." And then she's like, "I'm sorry, why are you on your knees?" And they're like, "Virgin, please, we are holy priests of Jesu." And then they're like, and then she's like, Who's the virgin?" They're like, "Oh, you're not the virgin." It's like, "Sorry, we're referring to, the Virgin Mary, the mother of the Most High." And then they're like, "The mother of the most," and then, like, they have a conversation, but the whole thing is like, honestly, this is a great scene, right? Like the priests take their faith seriously. They speak to her like they're in a church trying to restore the church. They see her thinking that they're seeing some sort of vision of the Virgin Mary, and then they explain Christianity to her. You know,
Hmm.
it's great. It's really good. They have a character who is named David or David or David. I don't know exactly how they pronounce it. It's spelled Dafyd. He's based on a real Saint David the priest. He was also in Lawhead's book.
Hmm.
He's like friends with Merlin. He converts a lot of the people. Um, he's a great character. He's there the whole time. They have Avalak the Fisher King. Um, I don't know. It's just like, I guess I would say if you like epic fantasy, this is a really well made one. Wilhelm scream aside.
I've seen some comments about it.
Yes. Um, I will say if I had to be critical of it, you definitely could be. The acting is great, no complaints there, no issues with any of the performances. But they the first two books of the Pendragon cycle are supposedly going to be covered in like these first two episodes, right? Or at least the first book is like these first two episodes of 8. And then the rest of
Hmm.
the series is going to cover book 2, which is Merlin. All right,
Right.
that's great and all, right? And that's fine, except that Taliesin is not that short of a book. That's book 1 of the Pendragon cycle, right? Like, it isn't
Yeah.
a super short book. And there is a lot going on. It's like these two parallel timelines following Taliesin and how he rose up to be like the prince of his kingdom and the great bard who converted to Christianity, and Caris, who is an Atlantean bull rider. So as Ben pointed out to me, they're Atlantis is Minoan coded,
Yep.
Crete coded. It 100% is. That's absolutely intentional. I'm pretty sure that was Lawhead's intention. So like, I'm not insulting it. Like they're Minoans, right? The Atlanteans are Minoans. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm a
she's
big
like
fan
part
of
of.
Minoan civilization. So,
So she's like a professional bull rider, and she's very poppy. And her father is the king. And Laud spends a lot of time building up this Atlantean culture, only to just sink Atlantis and destroy it, right? And Caris like gets visions and manages to warn everyone. Her father manages to get people out and bring them out. This is like the entirety of book 1, right? Is what's
hmm.
going on with Taliesin and what's going on with Caris. We don't see any of Atlantean culture. All we see is one bullfight with Caris,
Mm.
where her god Bel like enters the ring with her as a bull and nearly kills her, but then he dies, and this is supposed to be a bad omen that like Atlantis is about to sink.
Right.
Okay, so this is all we see of Atlantean culture is this one bullfight. This is a major part of the original book. Um and with Taliesin, we like see young Taliesin as or Taliesin's father when he is younger, and then we see Taliesin, fine Taliesin floating in the river like Moses, which I forgot was a thing, but is in Lawhead's book. And then we see Taliesin as an adult, and we skip all
Hmm.
of the time in between. And then we meet, they just like fast forward to all of the Atlanteans are in Britain and they were saying, hey, Chris saved us all. And it's like, wow. So there was this massive cataclysm that destroyed your civilization. And she was like a doomed prophet who only managed to convince, like, they mentioned 2,000 Atlanteans to flee, and come to Britain to settle there. And like that all sounds really fascinating. I wonder what it would have been like to see it, any of it. Like,
Listen, listen, Anthony. Josh Ben Shapiro was getting nightmares. All right, nightmares about this.
his idol, Mr. Potter, the real hero of It's a Wonderful Life, never would have funded this film. I still can't believe that's real.
I can't believe someone let him say it.
Like, nobody
Uh,
said, dude, like, I don't think, and then I could even see like no, I said like the real financial hero. It's like shut the fuck up, Ben. Shut up.
Shut up, Fox Day was right about you. We'll call him up right now. We'll call him up right now, and then you'll see.
You
Uh,
think Ben Shapiro ever thinks about Vox?
only in like hot flashes and nightmares.
Yes. Anyway, yeah, it's wild to think that one time they worked together, and and Vox already hated him.
Yeah,
But anyway, uh, that's yeah, like they really flash forward to here, and then it's like, okay, so now the Atlanteans have a massive castle in the south of Britain. It's like, wow, that's a very well maintained castle that they somehow have access to with only 1,000 people left now,
right.
right? Like, I wonder how they got this huge castle. Like, again, it would have been really interesting to see, like, how did they get this? Like, castles are major pieces of infrastructure. Did they build it?
Yeah, probably.
And then it's like, okay, now I asked this all hypothetically because I read the book. It's all there, right? But
Right.
like, um, and then Taliesin's people have apparently been driven out of their land and now are like beggars and are in the court. And it's like, wow, okay. Apparently they really fell on hard times. I wonder what happened. I guess
Yeah.
we'll never know. Uh and we just kind of don't. They're just like, yeah, we were driven out of the land. It's really violent. Sucks. But
Okay.
there's even another moment where it's like, her father doesn't want him to marry the savage barbarians who came to them for help, and he wants them to like pay tribute in return for giving them land. He says, but then you would ruin their dignity as a people, so they go to leave, and there's talk of maybe them fighting, and then Caris and Taliesin run off. Right? Okay,
Right.
no issue with any of this. It's all fine, right? Like, perfectly acceptable epic fantasy stuff. Uh, Again, they do have like love at first sight. I do like the woman who plays Morgana. She has the right sort of she's like the Morgan Le Fay character, right? They call her Morgana. Uh, she has the right sort of look for it. I don't know how to describe it. I like the way she plays it. She's very, very pretty, but in a more I don't know. She plays it well in a way that makes you not trust her, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, they run off, and that's all for the good, right? Like, this is all fine, perfectly welcome epic fantasy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They have a great scene where they go to a court of another king, and Taliesin like is very confidently preaching the kingdom of summer because he represents the true god. And then they have like an evil priest, and he silences his tongue, and then they all turn to the worship of the true god. All right, it's great. Merlin is born miraculously, and then Morgane kills Taliesin. But right before the scene, this ends episode 2, right? Right before the scene, they like come up and they go, "Oh, your father Avalak, who's the Fisher King, right, of the in the Atlanteans. He says he's forgiven you. He's offering you the sword. He wants you to come back. He wants to make Taliesin king, and this is his token of sincerity." Now I'm like, holy crap, that is a massive turnaround. He was like about to go to war with them. Like we don't
Right.
see any of this.
Right.
It all happens off screen.
Listen, Ben Shapiro's blood pressure gets higher with every episode. All right.
Yes.
Higher and
It's just
higher.
like they just come up to him with a messenger and be like, Avalak completely changed his mind. He wants you back, and he's gonna make Taliesin Prince. And then it's just like,
Mm.
oh, okay then. I guess that's just what's gonna happen now, huh? And then, but then the episode flash forwards to, I'm not kidding, this is how it ends, 75 years later. End of episode. And I'm like, okay. I understand that Law had covered a lot of ground in this period of time, and that sometimes his pacing himself was even kind of off.
Yeah.
Like he weirdly skates over like supposedly important events,
Sure.
very quickly. So I do understand that this would have been like difficult to do, but like 75 years, really.
Hey man, you got to jump these times somewhere. Like
It's a
Minoan
lot
jumping
of
a bull.
time.
Listen, Anthony, I know for a fact that they didn't go full Minoan and have all the Minoan glories out there. All right, you just have to make some acceptance. I listen, Anthony. Listen, Minoan culture. Even though they had that whole thing about bull worship, have you seen how they dressed? Just the best, Anthony. The absolute best. This culture, they just needed to go for those who don't know. Minoan culture basically had no concept of a shirt for anybody or anything for any reason. So that's why I extol the virtues of this culture. All right, I'm just saying. I deserve to be shirtless. Everyone deserves to be shirtless. Beautiful women as well. Uh, I've lost my mind thinking about all this Minoan culture that they could have had in a Daily Wire show, Anthony, and they just didn't. Okay, they just didn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, with
It's
all of
not.
my nitpicking here, I do recommend it just if anything for the visuals alone. It's really cool looking. And I am very hopeful of how they're going to adapt the Pendragon Cycle, which is a brilliant series. Now, do I recommend you give Ben Shapiro money for it? Well, you can probably find it without.
Listen, all you're going to do is emulate his personal hero, Mr. Potter,
Yes.
and steal
His
money.
the financial hero of It's a Wonderful Life, Mr. Potter.
The man who is so petty, he will just steal money from people he believes are crashing out anyway. Mm. That is what he did, but though, like I don't care that he just found it. He knew who it belonged to, and he kept it.
Well, yeah, Mr. Potter stole the
Yeah.
money. Like he stole it.
Yes.
I don't know. People, It's a Wonderful Life is just it's a great movie and it is a deserved American classic. And I
Mm.
feel like just because of that, you find people who really go to the bottom of the barrel to try and come up with some way to like have a problem with it, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's secretly communist when the main character is a banker.
Yeah.
And then they go like, "Oh, he's the everyman communist. He's the everyman who's going up against the evil banker." It's like, no, no, George is explicitly not an everyman. They make that point in the movie. They're very clear about it.
Mm-hmm.
George is a remarkable person who is also a banker.
Yes.
Now, he is representing the everyman, but the reason that he's able to stand up for them is because he himself is extraordinary.
Yeah. And besides that, it's like the ordinary don't raise to the heights of George or like King Arthur as well. Like, one of the biggest triumphs of the modern world against the soul of humanity is the fact that so many people who could be exceptional have become, normal, ordinary, or worse. Uh, it's like Arthur can't exist without extraordinary men around him. And it seems like there's very few anywhere uh, who can take up the call. I assume it must have felt like this, at the time of Arthur's rise, where he had, ordinary men and then more brutal ordinary men ruling over them. Um, like when you look at the stories involving like Lot of Orkney and all these other side kings, some of whom are only mentioned by name once or twice, it doesn't seem like they're anything special. King Mark of the Tristan and Isolde legends is a cuckold, but at the same time, he treats it like so ordinary. Like he leaves his kingdom multiple times just to follow Tristan around and do his like Looney Tunes ass revenge against him, and for insults that nobody was really laughing at him about. They were laughing at him because he was a small, ordinary man, and he let his jealousy, destroy him. You look at characters like Mordred. Mordred was, one of the weakest knights um, until the brain damage. But even then, there's no real good description of him in battle past a certain point, especially in the end there. It just says that he survives. Did he suddenly gain, the extraordinary status that was necessary at the time to lead men? I think so. I think he would necessarily have it. You know, the we've been against weak Mordred, from whenever we conceived of the idea that it could be a problem. But like when it comes to these stories, in the end, the ordinary just doesn't work. There must be something extraordinary in the spirit of the individual for it to be interesting. Even the certain French romances, where people are sleeping with each other or whatever, they still require the hero to have a yearning in him to be more than just a man tilling his field. While it's perfectly respectable, at the same time, it doesn't make that heroic story. If you are, a man who is tilling the field, a woman who is, raising her family, which are platonic ideals, by the way. Um, the era of the girl boss is over. You can use that to broaden and deepen your connection with the Lord, uh, in a way that the extraordinary man simply can't. There's a quote from Evola that the blood of heroes is closer to God than the blood of martyrs. And if you mean it in a heroic, which he didn't, by the way, if you mean it in like a heroic preaching of the gospel, yeah, sure, in a way. But in reality, if you read Revelations, the blood of the martyrs and the prayers, the incense of the prayers of the saints are at the feet of his throne. The heroes of the faith, the 24 elders will say, I believe that you don't become one of the 24 elders without being a hero of the faith, um, are actually further from God's throne than the incense, which is wreathed around the area, and the blood of the martyrs, which are pooled at the feet. Not literally in his feet, but like, arrayed before an altar. Um, it's these pagan conceptions of the extraordinary are actually uh, too self-absorbed, too self-knowing. Odysseus might have been self-knowing, but Achilles and Agamemnon and Diomedes and Hector, it doesn't seem to be there. Hector in a Twilight way, I think, but um, it the extraordinary is necessary for the truly heroic life, and the heroic jump into what Arthur was in English literature and in poetry and in so much more. It's not something the ordinary man can do. It's not something that can be done, um, while maintaining a certain um, corruption of what we call meekness these days. In the end, Moses was the leader of his people, and he was the meekest man on earth. And he still had moments of rage where he just couldn't take it anymore. And that's after he murdered a man. Meekest man on earth had anger issues because of his leadership role and responsibility and the unfaithfulness of the people he led, who were literally seeing signs of God constantly, and they still doubted their Lord and Savior from the chains of Egypt. So it's like to tear down Arthur and to make him a common man is simply not accurate. It simply wouldn't be Arthur. But to promote the heroic ideal actually makes us more like Arthur than those who are seeking the real Arthur. Um, than to sort of attack the heroic ideals. Fundamentally, if people still had the heroic ideals, the rape of England wouldn't be happening right now. If people still had the American ideals in the great way that our forefathers did, and I'm being a Jeremiah here, maybe we would have had some of the immigration, sure, because they did, like, for what they wrote. They sure were willing to accept the French colony. Like, they didn't freak out when Jefferson bought Louisiana, you know what I mean, and brought the French speakers in, even though they were relatively fewer in number than any one of the colonies. Like, that didn't happen like it was like some people would treat it now, but they would still be of a different kind. They wouldn't put up with this shit in Minneapolis. They would have actually murdered most of the people involved before it ever got this far. Tim Walz selling nuclear secrets probably to China. That manual that went missing, and then suddenly China has one of their own, and he had control over the manual. He would have been hung already years and years ago. But they had the heroic will to maintain things like law in the land, even when people complained about it. um, Washington was willing to shoot people over the Whiskey Rebellion, but they, thank God they deferred. Missouri had laws on the books that may even still be pliable, even though no one would ever defend them or consider them legitimate, that let them murder Mormons. Except it wouldn't be murder. I misspeak there. Let them kill Mormons who were settling in
Yes.
Missouri lands. Um, Murder is unlawful killing, and if it's in the law, what God's opinion on it? They were heretics, are heretics. It's like there's a spirit that's lost in the world that a study of Arthur can slowly enkindle. Men like Julius Evola, don't understand it. They don't understand the true core of Arthur, and that's Arthur as an image of Christ the King. No adaptation, no poetry, no story, no mindset, no spirit comes can ever be as true if it denies that fundamental center reality. Arthur is king, and if you wish to do honor to Arthur and emulate his life, you must also emulate his faith, which is evident even in the beginning, even in the poems that are fragments, bare few lines, speak of a man who laughs at death because he has a higher nature and he knows of that higher nature. He may not call upon Christ in all of them, but as Christians, death has no sting anymore, and our lives are but a breath. These assurances that we have in death, for those who are as high spirited as Arthur, give him his laugh, his joy in battle. even at the loss of friends, which cause him so much grief. It's more, it's higher, it's an image of reality that's deeper than the perennialists and the uh, atheists can possibly think of every time they deny Christ. Hmm.
Yeah, no. Uh, I think that's right. I think that's the value of the stories of Arthur. I mean, the thing about the stories that fascinated me, which is actually a later edition, is the affair with Guinevere, Lancelot, and Arthur. I've always found it to be very compelling because it always felt like a very human ending to a story of great men, but also a very believable one. You know, something that you could see kind of, you know, these sorts of petty rivalries, jealousies, you know, uh, lust, it overcomes people, and this leads to the fall of a great civilization, and that's what sin is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I got nothing else. I'm good for now.
I find that as I pursue God more and more, especially with the counseling and other things I'm learning and going for, seeking God's will rather than my own pleasure. Sin loses any hold on me, and it becomes, even though the desire is still there to rebel against God, it's easier and easier to push it aside. And I think that that's something for everybody. That when Arthur and all these other men pursued God, they became a higher version of themselves. But then when they fell into their sins, when Lancelot, chose to fulfill his uh, lust for Guinevere, um, it brought them down, where they no longer were the supermen that they could have been, but became, you know, normal men in armor. Um, hmm, anyway. All right. Thank you guys for coming on. I don't really have a plan for next week. None of the usual sources I pull guests from are very inspiring. Um, might do a few different things. Might talk about Primal. Might talk about other
Ooh.
stories that we're reading.
Ah.
Uh, might talk just a variety show. I'll have a lot of things I'll be doing this week, and I think I'd appreciate that. Unless Anthony has something that he desperately hungers and thirsts to talk about.
Face reveal where we wear our pro ice hats.
Oh, that's right. That's right. For those who say a prayer for the dead, for their families. I made this point to some people in somewhere else, where it's essentially like you have to imagine all the choices that these people came up. Like that one guy who's a resident nurse. Every day he helps people, or at the very least comforts them in their passing. And rather than helping the people of his neighborhood and doing a good job, he goes out for strangers that help him, hate him, excuse me, that rob his nation, that hate everything that his nation is built on, and he died for that. It's 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 it speaks not of a heavenly mindset but a hellish one. Um, God preserve America. All right. Sorry to leave it on such a note. The next week, variety show. Uh, if you want us to look at something, you can send it to us at pinkertonsghost at gmail.com. And I'm probably going to go upload an episode for our backers tonight. Uh, I need
Yay.
I need to get on that actually. It's mm, I need more. I need to write more and be more. Heroically jamming my pen into the throat of uncreativity.